Hello everyone and welcome to the lecture 2 of the Java tutorial series Essentials for Selenium, right? So in this lecture we're gonna study about data types. There are basically two types of data types available in Java. One is primitive and one is non-primitive. So what are these data types we're gonna discuss? I'll really quick create a new project and give it a name as Java lecture 2. So here I'll create a new class and give it a name as data types, right, and I'll check this main method over here. Alright, so firstly we're going to see about primitive data types. What are primitive data types? If I can write int I can write float f, and there is another called long L and boolean b and char c, and that's a string s. So all these are data types. These we called as primitive data types because these are part of the language that we are using. So if we take a look at primitive data types are defined by the programming language itself, right? So int basically if I use the int data type, int itself gonna refer to the integer value. We're gonna store integer value inside this int data type. Similarly, float will gonna store float value, long will gonna store long value, char will gonna store character values, and string will gonna store string values. String is it is also a class in Java, right? So we're going to talk about these data types, how we're going to store values and what all values can be stored inside it. So if I talk about int, I can store value, let's say 1 2 3 4, any integer value can be stored inside int data type, right? Float, generally it stores decimal values. So if we have value like 1.234, right? So float generally store decimal values. With float, we need to suffix f whenever whenever we are using float. We need to suffix it with f. And then if we talk about long also stores the value something like this, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So let's say if we talk about integer, long also stores integer values, right? But with integer, if I write 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0, right, up to 10 values, 10 digit it is storing. If I just write one more over here, you can see it will gonna throw an error, right? So it is saying that this int is out of range, right? Because int stores values up till here only, right? So what we need to do, if we have long integer values, then we're gonna store it over here. 6 7 8 9 10 1, right? And how long we're gonna store it? We're gonna suffix l at the end and it will gonna store this value. So we can have long values up till any character over here, right? Similarly, there is one more data type, that is double. Now what sort of values double will gonna store? Double will gonna store values that are, so double is like float only, but the only difference is that a double contains longer values after decimal, so we can have longer values over here, right? Whereas if you talk about this float, it cannot store if the values goes more longer. I mean, we need to put f over here, but with double there is nothing like that, right? We can have values in double like this, right? So this is the only difference in double and float, right? And then we talk about a data type, that is boolean. Now what sort of values boolean will gonna store? Boolean only stores values that result in true or false, right? Either a condition is true or a condition is false, right? So it generally stores value either true or false, right? So this is how Boolean will gonna store value. Character will gonna store only single character. We can write a over here. It only stores a single character. If there are more than one character, then it will not gonna store it because these sort of values will gonna be stored inside a string variable. So in a string, I can write complete sentence like this is Java tutorial, right? So these are all data types, and these are the major data types which we gonna use a lot while learning Java, and our entire Java is dependent on all these data types, right? So these are basically primitive data types because these are defined by the programming language itself. Now if I write over here, if I write the class that we have created over here, that is a test class, right? This is also a variable, and if I write it like this, test t, right? Now this test, just second, it's asking me to, okay, let me save it. Alright, I cannot directly call test from here because this test is inside a different project, and now we are inside a different project, right? So what I can do, let's say if I create an object of this class, I'll say data type D. Now this we call as okay, D I've already used. See, we cannot use the same variable again, otherwise it will gonna say that this is a duplicate local variable, right? So I'll say like this, right? Now this is also a data type for this variable, right? But this is a non-primitive data type. So if we take a look over here, so non-primitive data types are defined by programmers, right? So in this, the data type of variable is the class whose object it is going to refer, right? So where you can see over here where test is the data type of T. So this is the difference in primitive and non-primitive data types, and these are the things we're going to use entirely in our Java, and whenever we're going to write Selenium code, so that will be purely based on these Java concepts. Now when we are assigning any value to any data type or any variable, then we are actually doing initialization. So this we call as initialization, and when we write int I or float f, this means that we are actually doing declaration, right? So if we take a look over here, if I go to the next slide, so declaration and initialization of primitive data types. So just with long and with float type of data types, we suffix L and F. Otherwise, it will be treated, if we don't write L, if we don't suffix L with the long values, then the compiler will gonna treat it as a integer, right? And this is how like we're gonna do the declaration and initialization of all these primitive variables, right? Let's take a look at the next thing. Next is Java string, right? Now string in Java, string is a class, right? It is not a data type, right? So it can be called as a class, it can be declared over here as a class only. So I can write string s equal to, and I can assign some value, some I've already taken s, so I can write xyz, anything I can, a variable could be anything, right? So I can write some string characters over here, right? Now in Java, string, the s of string should always be capital. If I make it small, then it will not gonna accept it, because Java is a case sensitive language, right? Now to know what all things will be in capitals and what all things will be in small letters, right? There is a standard, a common standard which we gonna follow throughout the course, that we also call as camel casing, right? So what I'll do, I'll go to my Java lectures over here. All right, and I'll just open the introduction part so that I'll first make you familiar with what camel casing is. So camel casing is, let's say if you are working as a professional programmer, right? So how actually you're gonna code it, what are the coding standards that you're gonna follow, right? So that is what defined, like how you're gonna declare, how you're gonna create a class, and will it follow like uppercase or a lowercase, how everything will be formed, right? So all these things will be defined with this camel casing, right? So this will really going to help you a lot in case you're working professionally, in case you are doing some coding, in case you are working on automation project as well, and if you are writing Java code. So these things will gonna help a lot. So let's understand more about camel casing. Let's say I go back to the Eclipse, and let's say if I write something like int and I declare variables, let's say Batman begins, right? So compiler will not gonna accept it, right? Because there is a space in between this variable. So if I remove the space, it does accepts it, but the readability, like it's become less readable, right? So if it comes like all of a sudden it comes in front of you, you might not be able to read it. If still you are able to read it, because you know that this is these are two words, and we have formed a single word using this Batman begins, right? What if I write int the dark, let's say night, right? So now this is form of three words, right? So it is now less readable, again less readable than we were reading these two words. Now what if a variable something like the dark night rises, right? So there are four words right now, right? Let me correct the spelling. All right. So there are four words. So the longer the variable like goes on, the longer it will be less readable, right? So that is why, I mean, we follow the concept of camel casing over here. So so what we're gonna do to make it more readable, I can do one thing. I can after every word I can write underscore, right? Then it will be more readable. Right now we are able to understand that these are like four words. But to do this, I have actually like increased three more words, right? Underscore is also treated as an individual word, right? So there are some special cases which we're going to talk about where these underscores will be used. But here we are not going to use underscore. We're gonna follow the camel casing concept, and that says that in integer, the integer always starts with a small letter, and then after wherever the first word ends, the next letter would be of the second word should be capital, and then for the third should be capital. So how many words will there be? All of them will start from a capital letter. Now this will be more readable, right? Over here, if I write Batman begins, if I write the dark night, right? So this is more readable now, right? And this is what we call as camel casing, right? You can see it form up like the same thing that you see over here with a camel, right? It forms up a structure of camel, right? So based on this, some guys like who have created Java, they have also created some conventions, let's say there are some coding standards, I mean, which they have form up, and which they say is that if everyone in the world follows the same coding standard, then the code will be more readable, and if a new person is reading that code, he should be able to get what exactly is written inside that code if he is using the same naming conventions. So these are some naming standards that we're going to follow. So the very first rule is that a class should always start with a capital letter, right? And then it accepts the camel casing, right? Like this. If I create a class way to automation, then the first letter should be capital, and then it can be camel casing, right? So these are not mandatory, right? It's not mandatory that you should always keep the class with a capital letter. If you write it with small letter as well, you will gonna create a class, right? It doesn't mean that with small letters you cannot create a class, but this is a standard practice that is being followed by everyone, by a professional who is actually writing Java code, right? This is what followed by almost everyone, right? Similarly, if we talk about interfaces, right, interfaces should also be capital, then camel casing, and the name should represent adjectives, right, like runnable, serializable, action listener, right? Over here, it in class it should represent the noun, right? So noun could be account, dog, way to automation, right? So the other rule of class and interface is that the class is always when we create a class, when you read the Java document of any library, you will find that a class is always in a normal font, whereas an interface you will see it in an italic font. So you should be able to come to know that this is an interface, or this is a class, right? Similarly, if we talk about methods, right, generally people call them as functions. So let's say if you have ever worked on C++ or ASP or Visual Basic, you call these things as functions, but in Java we call them as methods, right? So a method should always start from a small letter, and then it follows the camel casing, right? And the name should represent a verb noun pair. So it could be let's say it should tell what that method is doing, right? So get result could be a method, do calculation could be a method, right? So this is a naming convention that we're going to follow for the method. And then for variable, the variable that we just created, we have seen. So variable should also start from a small letter and then camel casing, right? And it should be meaningful to a word that we have written. Let's say we are calculating the width of a button, right? So the variable should be button width. So it's telling that what this like variable will gonna hold, which value this variable will gonna hold, right? Account balance, so it will gonna hold the account balance, right? Similarly, we talk about constants. So constants, all characters should be in uppercase, right? If you are declaring any constant, then all the characters in constant should be uppercase, and each character should be separated by a underscore. So here is where we're going to use underscore. So these are the standard practice, right? If you see, if I show you one of the Java docs, let's say if I go to seleniumhq.org, and here if I go to downloads, and I'll show you the Java docs over here. So over here you can see with all these classes, they are following the same practice, right? A class always starts from a capital letter, right? So the thing that is in like italics, capabilities, right? So this is basically an interface. If I click on a normal font check, this is basically a class, right? So these are the common standards followed everywhere. Every Java document you're gonna read, you're gonna find these standard practices only, right? So we're gonna follow the same camel casing throughout the code throughout the examples that we're gonna use. Now, if we talk about like a string over here, right? We said that string is a class, right? So there is a Java document associated to a string class as well. If I search for string class Java doc, right, it will take me to this, and let's see if this is the alright. So this is basically, you can see a string is a class, right? And there are constructors, methods associated to this class, and you can see all the methods are starting with a small letters, right? All methods starts from a small letter, and class always starts from a capital letter. Over here as well, a class, all the classes you can see, all of them are starting with a capital letter. There is nothing you're gonna see in the small letter, right? And if you see the methods inside these classes, you're gonna find all the methods start from a small letter, right? A method starts from a small letter, right? So string class, if string is a class, then I can create an object of this class as well. I can say string abc equal to new string, and then I can assign some value to this abc. I'll say hello, right? But I could have also done this string abc equal to hello. Now what is the difference in these two things? So I'll say abc1 equal to hello, right? Now what is the difference? I mean, why I need to create an object of this class, and here if whether the object is getting created or not. So here as well, Java is implicitly creating the object of this string class, right? It's nothing like if you don't write this new string, then the object will not be created. Here as well, the object is being created, and the value hello is being assigned to this reference variable, right? Now that is what I mean we see when we talk about a string. If you go to the next slide, okay, this was over here, right? So in Java, string is a class and not a data type, and it can be instantiated like other classes, right? So we can write string as equal to new string. So let's take a look at concatenation in string. So how are we going to do concatenation in string? So let's say I have few strings available. I'll say string s1 equal to way, and string s2 equal to, let's say, 2, and string, I can even give the number within the double quotes as well, then it will be treated as a string, right? And then string s3 equal to automation, right? Now if I want to concatenate these three strings, it should be s3. So what I'm gonna do, I'll say string, I'll create another variable s4 equal to s1 plus s2 plus s3, right? And I'll print this s4. And when I save this and run this, what it will gonna print? It will gonna print way to automation, right? Now let's say if I give some space over here, so will it gonna give the space in s1 and s2? If I run this, no, it will not gonna give it, right? Now this space will not be counted, right? Because in string, whatever things that are in double quotes will be counted only, right? Anything after this will not be counted, right? So if I need to give some space, if I give it inside double quotes like this, and then over here, and then I run it again, then it will gonna print it something like this, right, with the spaces, right? So you can give n number of space over here. I mean, it will not gonna matter, right? These spaces will not be counted, right? If implicitly, if you need to give space over here, then you can you can also add a string over here by again one concatenation. This plus is a concatenation operator, and here you can give some spaces, right? And when I save this, when you run this, you can see a space is printed. So anything that you write over here will get concatenated with the string, right? This is how you're going to work with string. Now same thing I could have also done it like this way, like instead of storing s1, s2 and s3 over here like this. So what it was printing when I run this, it was printing weight water. And same thing I could have done it in this way. I could have written the same thing over here, s1 plus s2 plus s3, and what it will gonna print, it will gonna print the same result. Then what is the purpose of storing it inside a variable and then printing it? Or I could have also done, I could have also written it like this. Without storing it inside a variable, I could have written it like this: way plus 2 plus automation, and this will gonna give me the same results. See? Now when we are concatenating like string plus string, we call them as concatenated string, right? Now same thing I can do with integer as well. Let's say I have two variables, int num1 equal to 10 and another int num2 equal to 5, right? Now let's say if I need to add these two, I can simply write num1 plus num2. Now what it will gonna give me? Will it gonna give me 105, or will it gonna add these two values? So if I run this, let's run this and see, it will gonna give me 15, right? Now let's understand what's happened over here, right? So if we are, let's say if we are adding two integer values, then it will always gonna result in an integer, right? So let's say what happens if I add any string value to this. Let's say if I write after over here, what will happen? So if I run this, it will gonna print 15 and after. So first it will gonna add these two values. It will go from left to right? First it add these two values and then it concatenate the string with these values. The same thing if I write before over here, right? So just think in your mind what will happen, what will be the result. Will it gonna print before, 15 after, or will it gonna print something else? So what happens if I run this? As soon as I run this, see it has printed before 105 and then after, right? So what is happening over here? It is going from left to right. So first strings come into the picture, and then what it has done, it found the integer value and it has converted these integer values into string and then added them. So it forms up entire string. So what if I need to add these two values and print it along with these strings? So what I can do, I'll follow the BODMAS rule, right? So BODMAS you might be aware of. So everything and anything that starts with a bracket will be treated first, right? So now if I save this and run this, it will gonna print before, 15 and then after. So it will gonna add these two integer values and then concatenate these values, these string values along with it. All right. Now let's talk about another topic, that is Java operators. So in Java, basically we have three types of operators. So what all these operators are? First, there are unary operators. Then there are binary operators, right? Then there are ternary operators. right? Now what are these operators, and like what values will they're gonna accept and how they're gonna work. So let's see, if I write 12 plus 45, right? So here 12 and 45, these basically we call them as operands, right? These are basically operands, right? And this plus is an operator. This is an operator, right? So unary operator, it accepts a single operand, and binary it accepts two operand, and ternary it accepts three operands, right? So let's say if I go back here, so plus plus, this is basically a unary operand. So I can say a value something like I plus plus, right? Or I can say plus plus I, right? Or if I need to decrement anything, I can say minus minus I, or I minus minus, something like this, right? And then there is something we call this as a logical operator. Now this logical operator, it always works with a true or false condition. I cannot say it like this. Let's say if I write int I equal to 100, and then in the next line I'm saying not I. This basically we call it as not, right? So this is a logical operator. I cannot write it like this. This will not gonna work, right? So how will I use this logical operator? I can write, let's say if I print true over here, and if I write this, right? So what it will gonna print? If I run this, it will gonna print false, right? Same way if I write false over here, and if I run this, it will gonna return true, right? So this is how this operand logical, sorry, not operand operator, logical operator will be used. And similarly, if we take a look over here, these arithmetic operators, these are very easy to understand. So plus operator will gonna add like two operands, subtraction, this minus will gonna subtract two operands, multiply will gonna multiply two operands, division, divide, and then this. So these are basically we call them as binary operator, right? And then the other thing we're gonna take a look at is this is like the important thing. So how we're gonna use it? Equality and relational operator and conditional operator, right? So where are we gonna use this and how these are being used, right? So now if we talk about this equality and relational operators, how they're gonna work. Let's say if I write something over here, if I say 34 equal to 78, right? So I use the equal to operator, right? So what this will gonna return, what value this will gonna return? This will either gonna return true. If the values are equal, it will gonna return true. If they are not, it will gonna return false. So if I run this will gonna return me false. If I again change it back to 78, and if I again run this will gonna return me true, right? So these operators, these will only gonna return us the boolean value, right? If I let's say use greater than equal to, let's say if I write 34 and I write as greater than equal to, right? So this will gonna print false. But if I write it less than equal to, then this will gonna print true, right? So these are basically equality and relational operators, right? And now we're gonna take a look at conditional operators. What conditional operators are. Now what I'm gonna do, let's say if I write 34 and I'll use this operator, conditional and operator, and 78. What it will gonna print? It will not gonna print anything. It will gonna throw an error, because this is these operators will work on conditions only, and a condition could be only true or false, right? So it means if I write true and true over here, so this will gonna work. See, this works, and it will gonna print true. And if I write true and false, so it will gonna print something like false, right? So it means that this operator, this conditional operator, only gonna work on some particular condition. A condition could be like let's say if in bracket I write 123 equal to 124, and so one will be a false condition and one will be a true condition. I can say 10 equal to 10, right? So this will be a false condition and this will be a true condition, so it will gonna print false. And if I make it true, if I make this condition true, so this will gonna print it as true. So over here I can use any operator, right? So I can say less than equal to, and then again if I run this condition is again true, because this is equal to this, right? So this is how we're gonna use this. And now, and same is the way this operator is used. This is basically called as an OR operator. So either this condition should be true or this condition should be true, right? So this is basically an OR operator, right? So if I run this will let me save it. So it will gonna print true, right? Because both the conditions are true. So either this should be true or this should be true. So this is an OR operator, right? So ternary, we're going to talk about it later on, right? I'm going to show you some example on ternary operator as well, but that is not required over here. So that is the reason I have not talked about it. So these are again these are called as binary operators, because it requires two operands, right? And like the earlier that we have seen with a single operand was a unary operator, right? So that's about it in this chapter, in this lecture. So we're gonna we have seen what data types are, and we have seen how we can use operators, and we have seen some camel casing part, right? So these are very basic things. Most of you are already aware of all these concepts, right? But these are really important concepts. These help you to set up your base of Java, because in case you are learning Selenium automation, then you will be needing all these basics a lot, right? Because Selenium, it's nothing, it's not a tool, it's just an API, it's just a programming language. If you're working on Selenium with Java, then Selenium it has Java classes and Java methods, right, which you will be using, and to use them your core Java base should be very strong, right? So thanks a lot. We're gonna do up till this only in this lecture, and in next lecture we're gonna talk about methods and other things, right? So thanks a lot for your time, right?